Hey everyone, welcome back. My name is Tobias, and this channel is where true feeling nightmares come to life. The stories you're about to hear sink in quietly, linger in your thoughts, and allow you into the dark long after the lights go out. Before we begin, make sure you like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss out on new stories every week. Now get comfortable, lower the lights, and let's get right into tonight's story. This one's called We Visited a Lost Tribe in the Amazon. Only 3 of us came back. Take a drink before I get started. I used to tell people I studied stories. It sounded gentler than saying I was an anthropologist, and more honest than saying I chased disappearing worlds for grant money and academic prestige. Stories are what drew me in. Stories are what got us killed. There were 4 of us when we went into the Brazilian interior. 4 researchers from different corners of the same obsession, all convinced that if we walked far enough away from roads, maps, and satellite certainty, we would find something pure, untouched, human in a way the rest of us had forgotten. We were arrogant enough to think we could enter another person's world, write notes about it, and leave unchanged. My name is Daniel Mercer. I was 36 then, a cultural anthropologist from Oregon State, specialized in ritual belief systems and oral tradition. My career had stalled in that ugly middle ground between promising and forgotten. I had a book proposal no one wanted, a marriage that had ended 2 years earlier in the quiet way marriages die, and a professional hunger I disguised as curiosity. The others had their own reasons. Lena Varga was the linguist, Hungarian by birth, educated in Sao Paulo and Chicago with a gift for hearing structure where everyone else heard noise. She spoke 6 languages fluently and could begin to dismantle a 7th in a matter of days. She was the smartest person in any room and knew it, though she carried it lightly. There were rumors she'd left a tenured position after some ugly conflict with a department chair, but she never spoke about that. She only ever talked about words. Marcus Reed was our ethnobotanist, a former army medic who had reinvented himself in academia after a tour in Afghanistan. He was broad-shouldered, calm under pressure, and had the practical instincts the rest of us lacked. While the rest of us loved theory, Marcus loved systems that kept people alive. Medicinal plants, poisons, venoms, fermentation, smoke, roots. He said culture was best understood through what people used when they were sick, hungry, or dying. Then there was Sofia Alvarez, our documentarian and physical anthropologist. Born in Manaus, educated in Brasilia, with one foot in science and the other in faith, whether she admitted it or not. She was there to record the expedition for a museum partnership and to conduct skeletal and settlement analysis if the tribe permitted it. She knew the Amazon better than the rest of us combined, knew how rivers changed moods, how insects could ruin a week, how local silence often meant more than a local speech. We weren't supposed to find the Arantami. Officially, they weren't lost. Uncontacted was never entirely true in the Amazon. Someone always knew someone who'd heard of someone who had traded iron or seen smoke or lost a relative to a poisoned dart 50 years before. But in academic circles, the Arutami were a rumor wrapped in contradictory field notes from the 1950s and a single missionary account so unreliable that most people dismissed it as fevered fantasy. Supposedly, they lived near a branch of the Havari Basin and territory so difficult to access that even illegal loggers skirted the area. What made them irresistible to us was not their isolation, it was the story. 3 years earlier, a rubber tapper named Ivo Teles had come out of the forest half-starved and nearly mad. He claimed he had spent 8 nights among a tribe who worshipped a spirit that ascended during the full moon and wore men like jaguar skins. He said there was a black stone in the center of their village, stained dark with centuries of blood. He said strangers were never allowed to witness the moon ceremony unless they had been chosen. Everyone wrote him off as drunk, delirious, or lying for attention. Everyone wrote Everyone but Sophia found a record in a private diocesan archive in Manaus. A priest's letter from 1911 describing a vanished settlement near a moon rock where the face of the dead god enters the living. The description of scar patterns on the men matched a few secondhand accounts associated with the Aratami. After that, things moved fast. Funding appeared under the usual polite lies: cultural preservation, linguistic urgency, non invasive observation. A local fixer in Atalaya do Norte claimed he had a guide who knew the region. The guide, a gaunt man named Tadeo, with clouded eyes and an old machete scar across his lip, told us he could take us to a people who do not like being found. We should have listened to the second half of that sentence. Instead, we packed waterproof cases, satellite phones, antibiotics, camera equipment, field journals, drones we barely ended up using, and enough confidence to bury ourselves in. The trip inland took 9 days. The first was river, the second and third were mud, and after that, time was measured in discomforts: mosquito clouds, boots that never dried, the stink of mildew in clothes and bedding, the constant hum of unseen life. Tadao led without conversation. Sometimes he stopped and looked into the trees, as if waiting for permission. When Sophia pressed him for details about the Arutami, he would only say, "They know you are coming." On the fifth night, Marcus laughed it off. "Good," he said, leaning back against a root buttress while chewing tough smoked fish. "Maybe they'll have coffee ready." Lena smiled without looking up from her notebook. "If they do, I'm defecting." I remember Sophia not laughing. Firelight moved over her face. She stared past us into the dark. "Do you smell that?" We all lifted our heads. At first, I smelled only wet leaves and smoke. Then something else threaded through it. Sweet, rotten, floral in the wrong way, like blossoms left too long in a sealed room with meat. Marcus frowned. "Dead animal?" Tadao crouched by the fire, said quietly, "Stone flowers." I asked him what that meant. He stared at the flames. "When the moon calls them, they burn flowers on the rock. You smell it before you see the village." No one said much after that. By the morning of the 9th day, the forest began to thin in strange, deliberate ways. Not a clearing exactly, but a sense of design. Paths that carved rather than wandered, trunks marked with shallow cuts, bundles of feathers tied high in the branches. The air itself felt watched. Then we saw the first child. He stood on a fallen log ahead of us, naked except for a belt of woven fiber and a necklace of carved bone beads. White clay striped his face. He didn't look frightened. He looked curious, as if though we were the animals being studied. Tadao raised one hand. The child vanished into the trees without a sound. We entered the Aratami village at noon. It sat in a broad clearing ringed by towering kapok and Brazil nut trees. The houses were long communal structures roofed in palm thatch, their eaves low and shadowed. Smoke rose in pale ribbons. I saw maybe 60 people at first glance: women carrying baskets, boys with bows, old men with scarified chests and earlobes stretched by wooden plugs, dogs slunk between posts. Everyone stopped when we appeared. Not one face showed surprise. An elderly man with a headdress of iridescent black feathers stepped forward. His body was spare and whipcord hard. His chest and arms were patterned with raised scars that looked almost like claw marks. Beside him stood a younger man, painted in black from throat to waist, his eyes rimmed in red pigment. Tadao spoke rapidly in Portuguese, then in a halting dialect I didn't recognize. Lena listened intensely, her posture tightening. After a moment, she murmured, "He's saying we come with respect. He says we bring gifts. The old man is asking whether we are willing to witness what the moon reveals." A breeze passed through the clearing. I smelled that same sweet rot again. The old man was the shaman. His name, Lena approximated it later, was Yabiru. Though she warned us the word might have layered meanings we couldn't yet parse. Spirit eater, mouth of night, the one who opens, something in that family. He welcomed us with grave courtesy. The villagers accepted our machetes, fishhooks, salt, cloth, needles, and mirror fragments without visible excitement. But there was a current under the exchange that made my skin prickle. They watched us too closely. not like hosts, like appraisers. In the center of the village stood the stone. I saw it only in pieces at first between moving bodies and then all at once. It was a slab of black rock through about waist high, maybe 10 feet long, and naturally flat on top. Though the sides had been worked by human hands centuries earlier, the surface shone oddly even in diffused light. Grooves had been carved along the edges in patterns that might have been serpents or vines. Dried offerings laid at its base. Flowers if Flowers gone brown, small bundles of feathers, bones, clay bowls. One entire side was stained almost black red. You seeing that? Marcus muttered. Sophia lifted her camera, then lowered it again. Yes, Lena whispered. Don't photograph it yet. I wanted to disagree. Documentation mattered, but the instinct that moved through me was older than method. The stone did not feel like an artifact. It felt occupied. That afternoon, Yabiru assigned us to a section of a longhouse. Women brought cassava cakes, roasted fish, and a bitter drink Marcus suspected was lightly fermented. Children hovered nearby, fascinated by Lena's audio recorder and Sophia's lens caps. For a few hours, normalcy almost took hold. Lena began collecting vocabulary with two young women who laughed at her pronunciation and corrected her patiently. Marcus traded plant knowledge with an older healer who showed him bundles of bark and seed pods. Sophia walked the perimeter with a village hunter and returned troubled but vague. There are markers in the trees, she told us quietly after sunset. Lots of them. More outside the village than inside, like a boundary. I asked Tadeo about it, but he wouldn't meet my eyes. That night, the drums started. Not performance drums, not celebration. A slow, hollow beat that seemed to come from under the ground rather than across it. A whole village shifted around the sound. Fires were fed. Men painted themselves in dark bands of pigment. Women hung garlands of pale flowers from longhouse posts. Children were gathered outside. Lena checked the sky through the roof gaps and said, "Tomorrow is the night of the full moon." I remember the way Marcus exhaled through his nose. So we got here right on schedule. No one slept much. The drums went on until dawn. By the next morning, the village's politeness had hardened into something ritualized and remote. They still fed us, they still smiled in small ways, but people no longer engaged with us naturally. Their eyes went to the stone and then away. Even the children were kept distant. Tedel was gone. We found his pack missing, his hammock empty, his footprints lost in trampled dirt outside the longhouse. He had left before the sunrise without a word. Sophia swore under her breath. Marcus searched the perimeter for signs of struggle, but there were none. He ran, Marcus said. He knew something. Then why bring us here? I asked. Lena looked up from her notebook, face pale. Maybe because they told him to. That was the first time any of us said it aloud. By late afternoon, Yabiru came to us wearing a necklace of jaguar teeth and carrying a carved staff blackened by smoke. He spoke for a long time while Lena translated in fragments, her voice growing thinner as she went. He says tonight the ancestor comes down the moon path. She paused. He says the village has suffered sickness, barren hunts, children born weak. He says the old agreement was broken. The spirit must be fed on the stone or it will enter the houses and choose for itself. Marcus sat up straighter. Ask him what that has to do with us. Lena did. Yabiru answered immediately. Her face lost color. He said strangers are a gift sent by the forest. He says one of us was called before we arrived. Everything went still. Marcus stood. Tell him no. I still hear how childish that sounded. No, as if we were declining a dinner invitation. Lena translated anyway. Yabiru listened, then smiled, not kindly, but with patient pity. He says it is not our decision. The first spear landed at Marcus's feet before any of us moved. Then 6 more men stepped into the longhouse entrance. They didn't rush us. They closed the exits, steady and expressionless. Behind them, the drums had started again. Marcus raised his hand slowly. Easy. Sophia backed towards our gear, eyes sweeping for something useful. I remember the heat of the room, the stink of smoke and sweat, the violent hammering of my own pulse. Lena said very softly, "Daniel." I looked at her. The word he used for us. He used chosen, she swallowed. He used the singular second person before correcting himself. The room seemed to tilt. You're saying, I think he meant you. It made no sense. I had barely spoken to him. Then I remembered the moment in the clearing when we arrived, the way Yabiru had stared directly at me while the others remained peripheral, the strange pause before he welcomed us, that sweet rotten smell deepening when he came near. Marcus moved first. He snatched a cooking pot from near the fire and hurled it into the nearest warrior's face. Sophia kicked over a basket of embers. Lena grabbed my arm and screamed for me to run. The longhouse exploded into noise. Marcus tackled one man into a support post hard enough to crack it. Sophia lashed another with a utility knife, opening his forearm. I grabbed a pack. No idea why, pure instinct, and followed Lena throughout the smoke through a side opening in the wall where the thatch had loosened. Someone seized my ankle. I went down hard, face in dirt. Fingers like roots closed around my leg. I twisted and saw an old woman. Not frightened, not angry, just determined. Her teeth stained red from some leaf or root. She was chanting. I kicked free and crawled after Lena. By the time we burst out of the longhouse, the whole village seemed to be in motion. Men in paint and feathered headdresses, women carrying torches, children peering through slats, dogs barking madly. The drums beat faster. The moon had not yet risen, but the eastern sky was silvering. Forest, Sophia shouted. We ran. Branches tore at us the moment we crossed the tree line. Behind us, voices rose in coordinated calls, hunters signaling and circling. Marcus was beside me, then ahead of me, using his shoulders to punch through the vines. Lena ran like fear had made her weightless. Sophia kept looking back, counting us. There should have been 4. There were only 3. Marcus noticed first. Where's Lena? We stopped so abruptly I nearly collided with him. The forest behind us breathed. Sophia's eyes widened. She was right here. A scream cut through the trees. Not loud, not long. Human, female, and very suddenly cut off. Marcus started back immediately. Sophia grabbed him. No, we can't leave her. She's gone. We don't know that. I wish I could tell you we tried, that we fought our way back, heroic and doomed and noble, but the truth is uglier. The truth is that the screaming started again, not Lena this time, but something deeper in the forest, a terrible wet howling that broke into laughter in the middle, and every survival instinct in our bodies took over. We ran again. The jungle at night under a full rising moon is not dark the way people imagine. It is silver in patches, alive with contrast, every leaf edge lit and every gap black as a wound. We stumbled down a slope into a stream bed and followed water because Marcus said water might break the tracker's trail. Behind us, the calls changed. They became irregular, closer sometimes, then strangely far. At one point, I heard what sounded like Lena's voice, calling my name from her left, calm and clear as daylight. Sophia clamped a hand over my mouth before I could answer. Her eyes were wide. That isn't her. The sound came again. Daniel, then laughter, low, delighted, male. I nearly vomited. We kept moving for what felt like hours until Marcus found a shallow limestone overhang above the stream and forced us underneath it. It was barely enough space to crouch. The water below reflected moonlight like broken metal. For a while, none of us spoke. Then Marcus said, "We need a plan." I laughed, hysterical, ugly, involuntarily. Sophia slapped a hand over my mouth again, but softer this time. "What happened to Lena?" I whispered. No one answered. We listened to the jungle. At some point, the drums resumed, impossibly distant, carrying through the trees. Then came another sound layered over them, a single voice chanting in cadence that made my teeth hurt. Sophia closed her eyes. The shaman. Marcus unzipped the medical pouch he still had and began inventorying by touch: gauze, tape, antibiotic cream, ibuprofen, a flare, a field, scalpel, water purification tablets, useless against spears and whatever else hunted us. I checked the pack I grabbed in panic: a recorder, notebooks, half our dried rations, 2 headlamps, spare batteries, a canteen, and miraculously, Sophia's signal mirror. "Great," Marcus muttered. "We can blind them politely." Sophia was staring at the moonlit stream. "Did you see the stone?" "What about it?" I asked. "When we ran, there was someone on it already." Silence. Marcus frowned. "No. I saw a body lying there." "That's impossible," I said, though it came out weak. Sophia turned to me. "I know what I saw." The chanting grew louder for a moment, then stopped. Something moved beyond the stream. We froze. At first, I saw only leaves shivering where there was no wind. Then a figure stepped into a patch of moonlight on the opposite bank. Lena. At least it wore Lena's body. Her clothes were torn, one shoulder bare, skin smeared with dark pain or blood. Her hair hung loose and wet around her face, but it was the way she stood that made every part of me go cold. Head slightly tilted, arms relaxed, as if listening to music none of us could hear. Lena? I whispered. The figure smiled. It was her mouth, her teeth, her face. It was not her smile. Marcus grabbed my shoulder so hard it hurt. Don't move. Lena, or whatever now occupied her, took one slow step into the stream. Water rippled around her calves. She did not seem to notice the cold or the stones. Then she spoke in a voice layered with another beneath it, like two mouths trying to use one throat. Daniel. I think some part of me would have gone to her, some grieving irrational part. Then she raised her right hand. Hanging from it was Lena's own recording device, broken in half, its cord wrapped around 3 fingers. Tied to the cord was a strip of scalp with hair still attached. Sophia made a sound I had never heard from a human being before. Marcus shoved us deeper into the overhang just as 3 arrows hissed through the space we had occupied seconds earlier. The tribe had found us. Chaos followed. Marcus fired the flare blindly across the stream, turning the night blood red for an instant. Figures shrank back. Lena did not. The red light painted her face in grotesque angles as she came forward, smiling wider. Too wide now, mouth straining at the corners, as if the skin couldn't quite contain what wore it. We bolted from the overhang and up into the ravine. Arrows snapped through the leaves. One nicked my upper arm. Sophia stumbled, and Marcus hauled her upright without breaking stride. Behind us came the sounds of pursuit, splashing feet, calls, and occasionally Lena's voice saying things no living Lena would have said. I know where you sleep, Daniel. Marcus, your brother died with his eyes open. Sophia, your mother heard the river before it took her. That one hit Sophia like a blow. She almost fell again. How does it know that? I shouted. Marcus didn't answer. He climbed into the stream. Sound faded and the ground turned rocky. The trees here were thinner, roots exposed, and moonlight spilled more easily through the canopy. Ahead, dark against the pale sky, rose a formation of stone outcrops like broken teeth. Marcus pointed. There. We scrambled onto a narrow gap between boulders that opened onto a small shelf. From there, we could see a stretch of forest below. No movement, no voices, only the moon, full and white and merciless. For 10 minutes, we waited, shaking, listening. Then Sophia said, "It's not possession." Marcus glanced at her. What? It knows too much, but it's not like a ghost story. It's observational. It uses what it learns. It's manipulating stress responses. Her voice steadied as she spoke, falling into scientific rhythm. The tribe believes it's a spirit because that's the framework they have. But what if the ritual involves intoxication, fumes, plant compounds, blood loss, sensory overload? Marcus shook his head. You saw Lena. I saw Lena after they painted her and took her during a moon ceremony centered around a blood-stained stone and inhaled smoke from flowers that smelled narcotic. Sophia swallowed. I'm saying the supernatural explanation might not be the only one. I wanted desperately to believe her. Then from below us came Lena's laugh. Not from one place, from many. It moved among the trees in echoes, now near, now far, circling. Marcus crouched at the top of the line, at the lip of the shelf, and peered down. They're hurting us. I saw it then too, brief glimpses of painted bodies moving in coordinated arcs. They weren't charging. They were pushing us towards something. To where? I asked. No one needed to answer. Above and beyond the rocks, through gaps in the trees, I could just make out the open sky over the village clearing. They wanted us back at the stone. We tried to break east first, but 2 hunters appeared ahead of us, as if grown from the rock. Marcus tackled one and disarmed him, but the other cut Sophia across the thigh with a wooden blade, edged in sharpened bone. We retreated upslope, leaving blood on the stone. North led to a drop, south to more hunters. West towards the village remained open. As we moved, Lena followed just out of sight, speaking in the dark. Sometimes she sounded wounded and frightened. Daniel, please. Sometimes amused. Run faster. Once she began speaking in a language none of us knew, a rolling sequence of guttural sounds that ended in a child's giggle. Marcus kept us going by force of will. He broken the captured spear in half to make two sharpened staves. He gave one to me, one to Sophia, and then took the hunter's knife for himself. If they get close, he said, eyes or throat. I stared at him. What? He met my gaze. Do you want to live or not? The village appeared below us around midnight, transformed by moonlight into something ritual and ancient and entirely hostile. Fires ringed the clearing. Shadows moved in patterns around the stone. The drums beat in time with my pulse. Only now I could see that the black rock in the center was not naturally smooth. It had been worn smooth by generations of bodies laid across it. The realization nearly stopped my heart. We crouched at the edge of the tree line, three filthy academics turned animals, watching a ceremony meant to kill us. Yabiri stood at the stone with arms raised. Around him, the villagers chanted. Their voices rose and fell on a scale too narrow to be music, too repetitive to be speech. Lena stood to one side of the rock. Moonlight poured over her face. Blood had dried at her temple. Her eyes were open too wide. Irises swallowed by pupil until they looked black. Even from that distance, I could feel her looking at us. Then Yubiru turned, and though he shouldn't have been able to see through the trees, he pointed directly at our hiding place. The chanting stopped. Every head turned, and Lena smiled. What happened next is still hard for me to lift into to fit into ordinary language because ordinary language assumes a world with rules. Marcus rose from cover with a roar I had never heard from him and charged the clearing before either of us could stop him. He hurled his sharpened staff like a javelin. It struck Yubiru high in the chest and drove him back into the stone. The whole village convulsed into confusion. Go, Marcus shouted. Sophia and I followed because there was no other option. I remember fragments, a man lunging with a spear, and Sophia smashing the signal mirror into his face, a child screaming somewhere to my left. The smell of blood and floral smoke. Marcus ripping the jaguar tooth necklace from Yubira's neck while the shaman clawed at the shaft in his chest. Then Lena was on me. She moved faster than any injured human should. We hit the ground hard enough to drive breath from my body. Her knees pinned my arms. Her face hovered inches above mine. Up close, I saw the skin around her mouth had split at both corners. Not wide, but enough to show raw flesh beneath. Her breath smelled like flowers left to rot in a sealed jar. Chosen, she whispered in that doubled voice. I bucked wildly and managed to throw her sideways. Marcus was there in an instant, dragging me up. Sophia, he yelled. She was at the stone. At first I thought she had gone there to grab something. Then I saw she was hacking at the bowls and smoking braziers arranged at the base and kicking them over, smashing them with a rock. Break the ritual, she screamed. A villager tackled her from behind. She twisted and drove her broken spear half backwards into his throat. Then Yubiru, still impossibly alive, seized her ankle, and from where he lay against a stone, his mouth was black with blood. He began chanting. The air changed. There is no scientific phrasing that satisfies me here. I know what fear does to perception. I know adrenaline distorts time. I know inhaled alkaloids can induce suggestibility, hallucination, and group panic. I also knew that when Yubiru's blood ran over the stone, the surface beneath him seemed to move. Not crack, not ripple, move. As if something just below it had turned over in his sleep. The villagers dropped to their knees all at once. Even Marcus froze. Lena began to laugh and cry simultaneously. Sophia looked up at me with a face I will see until I die and shouted, "The moon!" I followed her gaze. A bank of storm cloud was moving over the clearing. Not much, just enough that within minutes, the full moon would be obscured. Marcus understood before I did. We hold until moon cover. Or dawn, I shouted. No, full moon. That's the window. Lena came at us again. This time Marcus met her head on. He was stronger, but whatever rode inside her did not care about joints, balance, or pain. She bit a chunk from his forearm. He slammed her into the side of the stone. She only laughed. I saw Sophia wrench free of Yubiru and climb onto the rock itself. She stood there in blood and moonlight, hair wild, like bleeding through torn fabric, and lifted the jaguar tooth necklace Marcus had ripped away. In broken but forceful Portuguese, she shouted, "You fed it lies." The chanting faltered. I don't know if the villagers understood her words, but they understood defiance. Yabiru screamed something at them, half rose. Then the cloud passed over the moon. The change was immediate. Lena convulsed as if hit by a current, her back arched. A sound tore out of her that no human lung should have made. Deep, cavernous, furious. The villagers recoiled in horror. Marcus didn't hesitate. He drove the hunting knife into her chest, once, twice. On the third strike, she looked directly at me. For one terrible instant, it was Lena again. Just Lena. Dazed, horrified, conscious enough to know what was happening. And then the darkness in her eyes broke like ink and water. She collapsed. At that same moment, Yabiru began shrieking and clawing at his own face. Black froth spilled from his mouth. The stone beneath him gave a sound like a deep exhale. The villagers ran, not all at once, but in waves. First the women with children, then the hunters, then the old men, each breaking from the clearing, as if some boundary had failed. Marcus grabbed Sophia off the stone. I stumbled towards Lena, but Marcus shouted, "Leave her." "I can't. She's gone." He was right. I knew it, but I could still see her hand lying open on the rock, palm up as if asking. We fled into the chaos of the emptying village through toppled bowls and dying fires into the trees beyond. Behind us, Yabiru's screams continued long after a throat full of blood should have silenced them. We walked until dawn. 3 of us had entered the forest that night. 3 of us came out of it at sunrise. Marcus half fainting from blood loss, Sophia limping and white-faced, and me carrying Lena's broken recorder like some absurd relic. We found the river by instinct and luck. 2 days later, after delirium and hunger, and one near fatal crossing, we reached a patrol outpost used by indigenous protection agents. Our story did not survive contact with bureaucracy. We reported an attack by an isolated tribe. We reported one team member killed. We admitted the possession. We admitted the moving stone. We admitted the black froth and the way the cloud had seemed time to mercy. Some things sound insane, even to the people who live them. An investigation was mounted, slowly and inadequately. By the time officials reached the coordinates we gave, the village was gone. Not abandoned. Gone. The clearing had been burned clean. No longhouses, no tools, no bodies, only ash, trampled earth, and in the center, a pit where the stone had once stood, as though it had never been there at all. That should have been the end. It almost was. Marcus left academia within 6 months. He returned to emergency medicine and never answered my messages after the first year. Sophia gave one formal statement and then disappeared into contract work in remote conservation zones. I heard she took jobs in places with no internet and little moonlight. I cannot blame her. I stayed, not because I was brave, because I was infected. I tried to prove it had all been explicable. Hallucinogenic smoke, collective belief, trauma distortion, a charismatic shaman, and a carefully staged sacrifice myth. I wrote drafts no one saw. I filled notebooks with cross-references to Amazonian ritual conditions and traditions, lunar cults, blood offerings, possession states, and mimicry phenomena under extreme stress. And always at the center of it, one fact I could not place. How had Lena known those things? Not broad things, specific things. Marcus's brother had died in Iraq with his eyes open. I learned later from an old interview Marcus gave before changing fields. Sophia's mother had drowned when Sophia was 9, after saying she could hear the river at night through closed walls. Lena could not have known either detail, and none of us had spoken about any of that. A year after Brazil, I received a padded envelope with no return address. Inside was an SD card. No note, no label. The card contained corrupted video footage recovered from one of Sophia's cameras. Most of it was static, artifacting, bursts of gray and digital tearing, but one file played for 43 seconds before freezing. The clip showed the village clearing at night, filmed from a hidden angle near the longhouse entrance. The moon was full, the stone gleamed black, the villagers circled it. Then the camera shifted shakily, panning to the far side of the clearing. There, standing beside Yabiru before the ceremony began, was Lena, alive, uninjured, calm, and beside her stood me, not someone who looked like me, Same shirt, same beard, same field pack strap over the shoulder. The timestamp placed the footage 17 minutes before I escaped from the longhouse. 17 minutes before I was, according to my own memory, inside the longhouse with Marcus and Sophia while Lena translated for us. Both things cannot be true. I watched the clip maybe 100 times, every freeze frame, every glitch, no sign of tampering I could identify, no explanation how Sophia could have filmed me in two places at once. I sent stills to Marcus. He replied once. That's not the part you should be focusing on. I called him immediately. He never picked up. 2 days later, he mailed me a package of his own. Inside was Lena's field notebook, water damaged but legible in patches. I had never seen it recover. Marcus included no note. Most pages were vocabulary lists and kinship diagrams. The final entry was written the afternoon before the full moon. I have it memorized now. Yubiru keeps looking at Daniel with recognition, not curiosity. I finally understood one phrase the older woman kept repeating when he passes. Returned face. They do not think he is being chosen. They think he has come back. Under that, written into different pressure, as if her hand had begun to shake, was one more sentence. Daniel says he dreamed this village when he was a child, but I'm almost certain he never told us that before today. I did dream it. That was the twist, I suppose, if a life can be called a twist. I dreamed it for years before we even went to Brazil. Not the whole place, just a fragment. A black stone in moonlight, flowers with sticky sweet smell, voices speaking a language I understood in the dream and forgot when I woke. As a child, I told my mother about the village under the white eye. She thought it was imagination. Eventually, I forgot enough to function, until I saw the stone. There was one detail I have not shared in any official account. When the thing inside Lena pinned me to the ground, it whispered, "Chosen." Yes, but it said something else first, in a language I did not consciously know. I know it now. Returned. 3 months ago, on the night of the full moon, I woke standing barefoot in my backyard with mud on my feet and blood under my nails. That laboratory testing identified as not mine. Last month, I found white clay beneath my tongue when I brushed my teeth. And yesterday, I received another package with no return address. Inside was a single black feather and a strip of old 16mm film. I had it digitized this morning. The footage is from 1911. Grainy, nearly useless. A missionary or trader filming a ritual from concealment. The village is not the same, but the stone is. So is the shaman. Not similar, the same man. Yubiru stands beside the rock, younger by nothing, older by nothing. And when the camera jerks suddenly towards the gathered strangers at the edge of the clearing, one of them turns towards the lens. The lens. He is tall, bearded, perhaps 35. He has my face. I have locked every door in my house tonight. The moon is full again. Outside, something keeps brushing softly against the siding, like fingers trailing along the wood. I tell myself that there is an explanation, family resemblance across impossible coincidence, ritual mask, generational repetition, damage to the film, damage to me, but the smell is back. Sweet flowers and rot. And a few minutes ago, while writing this, I heard a woman's voice from the hallway behind me, gentle and amused, wearing Lena's mouth. "Daniel," she said, "you were never the one who escaped." And that's where we'll stop for tonight. If this story stayed with you, if it followed you a little too closely after it ended, then it did exactly what it was meant to do. If you enjoyed listening, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. New stories are waiting, some already written, some still finding their way out of the dark. Write a comment if you want to share your thoughts or if you've experienced something you still can't explain. Until next time, keep the lights low, keep your doors locked, and try to get some sleep. Good night.